Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about being organized. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, how do you get yourself organized and plan ahead in your IT projects? Well, so usually to keep myself organized, I actually use a Kanban board myself. I have one that I use for Trello. On like you can do it in any tool. I mean I don't use Jira or something like that for or Azure boards or anything like that for my personal stuff. But I mean at work we use it, and sometimes it's a little bit sad I think because software developers don't really get how effective, at least I think, the Kanban board is. It's actually pretty genius because it allows me to create like a backlog of tasks and like sort of check what I have ongoing. Even if I need to pause a project for months, I don't know what I was doing. I can sort of pick up the state, and then I have columns or dependencies, things that are blocked. I can set timers, like all of this sort of stuff, right? And that has been working pretty well for me when it comes to staying organized at a personal level. It's my secret weapon in many cases. It's actually funny. For so far in the last two jobs I've had, that system of working, I've been commended or like patted on the shoulder for it being a quote unquote a clever way of working, and it's inspired more than a few of my coworkers to follow suit and do the same thing. Which I think is a little bit fun. I mean, I can't take credit for it because I mean it's just basically what they are doing at the team level, but at a personal level instead. And that is how I do the organization of myself. You sort of brain dump, like you have sort of an idea of what you're gonna do, and then you start like dumping things into the backlog, and then you prioritize, and then you start kind of planning on how things are gonna go, or what you need to do. And so the prioritization and planning usually comes with a bit of experience, where it's sort of it's like an assembly type of thing, right? Not the programming language assembly, but rather the assembling of a machine or like a model or something like that, where you know that you need to put all the pieces together, and some pieces you can put together in small pieces you can put into larger pieces, and then you put a few of those together so you get those larger pieces, and then you can fit the larger pieces. And so with a little bit of experience you sort of get a feel for in what order you have to do things when you sort of have an idea of where you want to head. I like to say that the most important thing for any endeavor, like in any group, is that you have a shared vision of where you are heading, and that in of itself can be a very tricky thing to align all the people so they sort of know where they're going. And I always found visual aids to be a good thing, etc., etc. But usually that is the first thing, right? You need to sort of know. You don't have to know exactly, but you sort of need to know. And then when you have that, you can work backwards. And then, as I said, like based on experience, you sort of figure out that, let's say that you're building a web server or something like that. Okay, first things first, you're going to build like a web application, right? Well, you need a graphical interface of some sort, which probably needs to be served up in some fashion, and that means that you need to have a server. Maybe you need a database, but you can actually wait with the database because the proof of concept is the first thing you want to do, so you don't have to build the whole thing, which means that you can serve up the interface without the database, and maybe use local storage or some other like temporary type of fake storage system to start off with. Then you need to host that in some fashion, which means that you can like package that into a Docker container or some type of deployment strategy. You want to do something cheap there probably, because the first demo stuff is probably just going to be viewed by maybe 2 or 3 people, depending on how you do it, right? If you want to do it simple, so you ship that to some type of Heroku or Droplet or like or temporary storage, something simple and dirt cheap, ideally free. You get some feedback on that thing, you iterate, and then the next thing is probably going to be that they want some type of session management, and then you get sort of into the thinking about, all right, how are you going to do sessions? Are you going to do something like use a cloud provided solution that is sort of low effort for you, or are you gonna self host, or are you gonna do like a a red disk type of thing, or it's TC. Like there are many ways of doing it basically, and you start to sort of get these sort of questions out into the open as you think about the problem, but that sort of depends on your level of experience as well. For some things, because some things are going to be known to you and some things are going to be unknown to you. So what I like to do is that I sort of think about all the things that I could possibly imagine, and then I put them in the backlog, and then I start to sort them based on what I know I need to do first, and then when there are some unknowns in there, I progress with the stuff that I know I have to do until I reach a point where I'm not so sure anymore, and then I start looking into the stuff that I know I need to look into, or like things that are experimental and so forth and so forth. I like to make the analogy to, it's sort of like that game, The Towers of Hanoi, when you have like, these discs and you can only put a smaller disc on top of a larger disc. And the trick is, or like when you sort of have some experience with doing this sort of work, where you sort of know in what order everything has to go. It's the same thing with the assembly, right? You know in what order to put everything together to minimize the amount of time you waste on doing things that are not necessary or things that are not value building, etc., right? And that is the way that I sort of plan ahead. Like you have a process where you know what you need to do before you can do other stuff, and then you need to just make sure that you're doing things in the right order. That's at least the best way I can describe my way of planning ahead. So what I want you to take away from this is the way that I stay organized is very simple. I use the same tried and true method that most software teams use, a Kanban board. It is the best tool for organizing I know of. It has everything that I need in order to keep track of. It doesn't really matter how many tasks I have. And this is especially useful if you're a product owner or a manager or something like that, where you might have some stuff that you can focus on and build and like make or fix in the same day, and some stuff that's going to take weeks. And if you just make sure that you use something like a Kanban board, you can represent the state that all the pieces of work are in. And then if you use tools that like gives you reminders and stuff like that, it basically becomes a calendar and a workflow. Like it becomes everything in the same sort of setup, right? You can structure it however you want. I like to tell my coworkers who have sort of taken the same idea that it's just a tool. It's like having a notebook or something. It's just something to offload your brain so you can think about other stuff, because you don't want to sit there and have to remember a bunch of shit when you can use your brain for the thing that it's really good at, which is processing. Storage and memory is great, but you shouldn't waste your storage and memory on stuff that you can just write down. And as for planning ahead, it's usually very simple. You get a rough idea of where I want to head with the thing, and then I start mapping out all the steps that I have to take to sort of get there, or the things that I think I need to do in order to get there, and then I prioritize them based on what I have to do in order to take the next meaningful step. It's sort of the MVP process in a way. And then I try to ignore, like, there are some things that I don't know, and then I try to think about, do I have to figure out these unknowns before I can safely progress on other stuff? If I know that I can, for example, I might make some super advanced algorithm, well, I can probably build the web server and like the infrastructure and deployment and all that stuff without having to figure out that algorithm ahead of time. So I might do that before I figure out the algorithm, because that is going to delay how quickly I have to address some of the harder issues. And I usually find there's a saying that make decisions as late as possible, which I think is a good thing, because the later you can make a decision, the more likely you are to have more information that is going to help make the problem, or like the thing that you're going to do, easier to deal with. So as I was saying, it's sort of like the Towers of Hanoi. You just sort of learn in what order you have to place everything and plan and orchestrate things so that you maximize the time that you can produce things without blocking yourself or having to redo stuff. Have a great day.